I was at a backyard barbecue last summer. One of those neighborhood things where everyone pretends they're relaxed, but they're really just sizing each other up. And I overheard this conversation between two dads standing by the grill. One of them, let's call him Mike, was talking about his kid's private school. The tuition, the facilities, the connections his son was going to make. He's going on and on about it like he just bought a golden ticket to his kid's future. But here's the thing. I know Mike. I know where he works. I know roughly what he makes. And I'm standing there doing the math in my head thinking, how? How is this guy paying 40 grand a year for elementary school? Then it hit me. He's not affording it. He's financing it. He's bleeding for it. He's just really, really good at hiding it. And that moment stuck with me because I started noticing it everywhere. Parents driving 10-year-old cars but paying prep school tuition. Families skipping vacations for years but posting first day of school photos at these fancy campuses. People maxing out credit lines while their 401k sits empty. There's this whole hidden economy of sacrifice happening behind closed doors, and nobody talks about it. Because admitting you can't actually afford something, in America, that's almost worse than being broke. So today, I want to pull back the curtain on what I call the sacrifice math. The real numbers, the real trade-offs, the stuff parents whisper about at 2 in the morning but never say out loud at the school fundraiser. Now look, if you're crushing it financially and private school is pocket change for you, awesome. This video probably isn't for you. But if you've ever laid awake wondering if you're making the right call or if you're curious how your neighbors are actually pulling this off, stick around. And just to be clear, nothing I'm about to share is financial advice. I'm not your advisor, I don't know your situation, and I'm definitely not telling you what to do with your money. What I am going to do is show you the math that most people are too uncomfortable to look at. The math that financial institutions, schools, and honestly, our own egos don't want us to see. I'm Blake, by the way, and I've spent years obsessing over these kinds of hidden financial patterns, the stuff that seems normal on the surface but is quietly destroying people's futures. If that sounds like something you want more of, hit subscribe, because I promise you, we're going to keep pulling threads that most people are afraid to touch. All right, let's get into it. So first, let's talk about what private school actually costs. Because I think a lot of people hear private school, and they picture some reasonable number, maybe 8, 10 grand a year, something manageable. Here's reality. The average private elementary school in America runs about $12,000 to $15,000 a year. That's the low end. We're talking religious schools, smaller institutions, nothing fancy. You want one of those nice prep schools? The ones with the Blazers and the lacrosse teams and the college counselors who personally know admissions officers? You're looking at $30,000 to $50,000 per year, per kid. Now let's do some uncomfortable math together. Let's say you're paying $25,000 a year. That's right in the middle, pretty common for a decent private school in a major metro area. Your kid starts in kindergarten, goes all the way through 12th grade. That's 13 years. 25,000 times 13 equals $325,000 for one kid. Got 2 kids? That's $650,000 before college even enters the conversation. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say instead of paying that tuition, you invested that same 25 grand every year into a basic index fund. Nothing fancy, just the S&P 500, which has historically returned about 10% annually. After 13 years, you wouldn't have $325,000. You'd have somewhere around $650,000, maybe more. That's the power of compound interest working for you instead of against you. So, the real cost of private school isn't just what you're paying. It's what you're not building. It's the wealth that never gets created, the retirement that never gets funded, the safety net that never gets woven. And look, I get it. When you're standing in that beautiful campus during the school tour and they're showing you the robotics lab and the organic garden and the kids who all look happy and well-adjusted, that future 600 grand feels abstract. Your kid's education feels immediate, but that's exactly how they get you. Let me tell you what sacrifice actually looks like in practice, because it's not dramatic, it's not obvious, it's quiet and slow, like a leak you don't notice until the foundation cracks. Sacrifice looks like pausing your 401k contributions. Just for a few years, you tell yourself, just until things stabilize. But those few years turn into a decade. And every year you're not contributing. You're not just losing that money. You're losing the employer match. That's literally free money you're leaving on the table. And you're losing decades of compound growth on all of it. Run the numbers on what a 10-year gap in retirement contributions actually costs you by age 65. It's not pretty. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost retirement wealth for a school that your kid won't even remember half the teachers from. Sacrifice looks like taking out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. You're essentially using your house as an ATM to pay for something that has zero resale value. At least when you overspend on a house, you still own an asset. When you overspend on tuition, you own a memory? A diploma that goes in a drawer? Sacrifice looks like the side hustle nobody knows about. Dad's doing consulting work at midnight. Mom took a part-time job she calls her passion project, but is really just covering the tuition gap. The family's running on fumes, but the Christmas card looks perfect. Sacrifice looks like the vacation that's always next year, the car that's held together with hope and YouTube repair videos, the emergency fund that doesn't exist because every spare dollar goes to the bursar's office. And here's the part that really gets me. All of this is happening in silence, because there's this unspoken rule that you don't talk about struggling to afford private school. You just figure it out. You sacrifice, because that's what good parents do, right? Wrong. That's what the marketing wants you to believe. Let's talk about the biggest myth in this whole conversation, the idea that private school is an investment, that it pays off, that you're buying your kid a better future. I used to believe this too. It makes sense on the surface. Better school, better education, better college, better job, better life. Simple, linear, obvious, except the data doesn't support it. Researchers at Harvard, including a guy named Raj Chetty, who's basically the godfather of economic mobility research, have spent years studying what actually predicts success in kids. And you know what the number one factor is? It's not the school. It's the family's income and stability. Kids from wealthy, stable families tend to do well regardless of where they go to school. Kids from struggling families tend to struggle regardless of where they go to school. The school itself? It's a much smaller variable than we want to admit. But wait, you say. What about the networking? The connections? Little Timmy's going to meet the right people. Okay, let's think about this. Your 8-year-old is going to network. He's going to build relationships at age 9 that somehow translate into career opportunities at age 29. That's a 20-year bet on friendships formed over juice boxes and recess. Meanwhile, LinkedIn exists. The internet exists. The ability to connect with anyone, anywhere, regardless of what elementary school you attended, that exists. The networking argument made sense in 1985. It's a fantasy in 2024. And what about college admissions? Surely private school helps there, right? Here's a reality check. Ivy League acceptance rates have dropped from around 20% 30 years ago to 3 to 5% today. The competition is insane. And private schools are cranking out polished applicants by the thousands. You're not buying an advantage. You're buying a slightly shinier lottery ticket. Paying $50,000 a year for better college odds is like buying your lottery ticket at a fancier gas station. The odds don't actually change. You just feel better about playing. So if the ROI isn't there, what's actually being purchased? I'll tell you. It's status. It's the bumper sticker. It's the answer to the question, where do your kids go to school, at dinner parties? It's the Instagram post on the first day. It's the feeling of being a good parent by society's scorecard. And look, I'm not judging that. We all want status. We all care what people think. That's human. But let's at least be honest about what we're buying. It's not education. It's a brand. Now let's talk about something even more uncomfortable. The long-term damage, not just to your finances, but to your entire family system. When parents sacrifice their financial security for private school, they're not just making a trade-off. They're creating a cascade of consequences that ripple through generations. First, there's the retirement problem. Americans are already terrible at saving for retirement. The average 50-year-old has like $50,000 saved. That's nothing. That's a few years of basic expenses if you're lucky. Now take those already behind parents and subtract a decade of tuition payments. What happens? They can't retire, or they retire into poverty, or they become financially dependent on the very kids they sacrificed everything for. That's the cruel irony. You drain your retirement to give your kids a better life. Then, 20 years later, You become their financial burden. The roles reverse, the sacrifice transfers. And what about the kids themselves? What are they learning from all this? They're learning that this is normal, that you're supposed to stretch beyond your means for private school, that keeping up appearances is worth going broke for, that lifestyle inflation is just what responsible parents do. So when they have kids, what do? The same thing. They sacrifice their futures for the same brand, the same bumper sticker, the same cycle. This is how wealth fails to accumulate across generations, not through bad investments or market crashes, through slow, invisible, socially approved bleeding. Now, I'm not here to just tear things down without offering perspective. So let's talk about what the alternative looks like. What would financially rational parents do? Option 1, the district strategy. Instead of spending $300,000 on tuition over 13 years, spend an extra $50,000 to $100,000 on a house in a great public school district. That money goes into an asset you own. It builds equity. It grows with the market. And your kid still gets a quality education. Option 2, targeted enrichment. Take a fraction of what you'd spend on tuition and invest it in specific things that actually move the needle. A math tutor, a writing coach, summer programs, travel, experiences that broaden perspective. You can build an incredible educational environment for a quarter of the cost and invest the rest. Option 3, the long game. Take that $25,000 a year and split it. Put some in a 529 for college. Put some in index funds. By the time your kid graduates high school, you've got college fully funded, maybe a down payment for their first home, and your retirement is still intact. The point is, there are options. Good ones. Options that don't require you to pretend everything's fine while your financial foundation crumbles. But those options require something uncomfortable. They require saying no. They require being the family that does things differently. They require letting go of the status game and focusing on actual outcomes. And that's hard. I know it's hard, because every other parent at the cocktail party is playing the same game, and opting out feels like losing. But here's what I've come to believe. The best education you can give your kids isn't a fancy campus or a prestigious name. It's showing them what financial wisdom looks like. It's modeling the behavior you want them to have. It's building actual security instead of performing success. Your kids would rather have parents who aren't stressed about money. They'd rather have parents who can actually retire. They'd rather have parents who are present and stable, not running on fumes trying to keep up an image. So here's the question I want to leave you with. And I'm not asking this to be preachy. I'm asking because I think it's the most important question in this whole conversation. Is this for your kid, or is it for you? Is it about their future, or your ego? Is it education, or status? There's no wrong answer, by the way. If you want to buy status, buy status. Just be honest about it, and make sure you can actually afford it. Like, actually, not making it work, afford it. Not figuring it out, afford it. Actually afford it with margin to spare. Because if you're sacrificing your retirement, your emergency fund, your peace of mind, your marriage's financial harmony, all for a school that statistically won't change your kids' outcomes much, that's not an investment. That's a quiet crisis dressed up as good parenting. Look, I know this is heavy, and I know some people watching this are going to disagree hard. That's fine. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to make sure you see the math that nobody wants to show you. What you do with it is your call. But whatever you decide, decide it with your eyes open. Not because of pressure, not because of fear, not because of what the neighbors might think. Decide it because you looked at the real numbers, the real trade-offs, the real long-term consequences, and you made a choice you can actually live with. That's all any of us can do. All right, that's it for today. If this made you think, even if it made you uncomfortable, that's kind of the point. We're going to keep having these conversations, keep looking at the numbers everyone ignores, keep challenging the stuff we're all supposed to just accept. I'll see you in the next one.